Where were you on 9/11? For those of us who were maybe older children to young adults to older adults, we might have very vivid memories. For those under the age of 23 or 24, they might not have any memory at all, as many of them were not alive. But that's a question that's been asked a lot in the last week on news media, certainly on different aspects of social media, and throughout the world as we reflect on a day that changed all of our lives and changed the course of the world and shook the foundations not only of our nation, but of our own understanding of humanity and even evil. I find it hard to look at the images. Even though I was not there on 9/11, I was at home taking care of Riley, who was just 9 months old. It's still difficult to see the Twin Towers being hit and falling and seeing the images of the rescue workers and all the different things that went on that day. I always find it interesting when the Gospels and other lessons from the day line up in some way about what's happening in the world. Probably because the themes within the Gospel are themes that strike our heart and at the core of our own humanity, but also they become very vivid. Where were we? How did things change for us? What were our emotions? What's happened for us in the last 20 years? How did the events of 9/11 change our perspectives on life, on faith, on hope, on all that we hold dear? One theologian that I have a tremendous amount of respect for is Archbishop Rowan Williams. He was the last Archbishop of Canterbury before our current one, and I always found his writings to be deep and meaningful. He happened to be just a few blocks away from the World Trade Center filming an episode for an upcoming show that he had put together about theology. He wrote a book afterwards called Writing in the Dust. I pull this book out every once in a while because it's so rich. It's small and thin and just a few pages, but so rich. And I thought I'd read this little bit of something he shared. Someone who is about to die in terrible anguish makes room in their mind for someone else, for the grief and terror of someone they love. They do what they can to take some atom of the pain away from that other by the inarticulate message on the mobile. That moment of making room is what I, as a religious person, have to notice. It isn't pious. It isn't language about God. It's simply language that brings into the world something other than self-defensiveness. It's a breathing space in the asthmatic climate of self-concern and competition. A breathing space that religious language doesn't often manage to create for or by itself. God always has to be rediscovered, which means God always has to be heard or seen where there aren't yet words for him. Saying something for the sake of another person in the presence of death must be one place of rediscovering. Careful, you can't do this too quickly. It can sound as though you're gratefully borrowing someone else's terrible experience to make another pious point. And after all, not everyone dies with the words of love. Sometimes there's cursing and hysteria and frantic, deluded efforts to be safe at all costs when people knew what was going on and knew what was happening. And anyone would want their private words of love butchered. It proves nothing. But all I can say is that for someone who does believe or tries to create the breathing space is something that allows the words of faith for a moment not to be as formal or as flat or self-serving as they usually are. I think powerful words from a very faithful person who's ground themselves in deep prayer about the need for space. What Rowan was writing about was, how do we respond to the actions of 9/11 and the consequences? How do we find the words, and how do we move through to a new space? In the gospel for today, Jesus says, "Take up my cross and follow me." He's challenging his disciples to find a different way. I think we often forget that the way that was around the disciples at the time was a way of violence and destruction. The people that Jesus was leading were under occupation by the Romans. The way of the cross for the Romans was one of suppression and of death. And Jesus rises in that moment as God's Son, as the Savior, as the Messiah, to bring a simple message of love of God and love of neighbor into the world. Jesus, in breathing his words to those around him, offers that space. There's a moment in the gospel when people are about to stone a woman who's been caught in adultery. And Jesus' response is to write in the dust for a little bit. Rowan writes in this book that it's in that pause, it's in that writing in the dust, that we make room for God. There's so much dust around us right now. The dust that's around us is from so much destruction. Not only from what happened around 9/11, but even in our modern time, with all of our struggles with COVID and political division and the unknowing of where we're headed and what's going to happen. Have we even been able to take a moment for a real pause? I think instead we're all in those moments of terror a little too much. We're not sure if we can get through a day. We're not sure what's going to happen. We're fearful of the virus. In some ways, this last year, like the days after 9/11, have shook the foundations of the world around us. This time, we don't have as clear of an enemy to point out to. We don't have a place to go and invade. We don't have something or a way to react. We don't have anyone really to blame. And I think that makes it even harder. So what do we do with this as people of faith, as Christians? I remember one of the most important things for me on 9/11 was to gather with my community and to pray. And I remember praying prayers that I'd prayed hundreds and thousands of times before that suddenly had new and deep meaning. It was as if God was speaking, even though he'd been speaking the whole time. And for the first time in that pause, in that moment, I could hear God more clearly. I remember words from hymns jumping from the page as if they were written in that moment, even though they'd been written centuries before. I remember in those moments of prayer, in that time in community, just as Rowan wrote, all of us searching for that space and reaching out to those we love, as we would hear news and begin to understand the world in very new and different terms and understandings. 9/11 isn't the only tragic event that most of us have experienced. We can all look to different moments in our life. I think one of the hardest things in our world these days is that we live with the delusion sometimes that everything in the world is okay, when it really isn't. And so part of our call as people of faith is to find those moments when we can ride in the dust and to be open to what God is doing in our life, and to be open to God moving us towards the way of love. We can't stop events from happening around us. We can't stop human evil. We can't decide that someone is not going to choose things. But we do have a say in how we respond and how we work to change the world around us. That's a hard reality for all of us to face. There isn't one thing we can do. But instead, love grows with one action, one step, one moment, day after day, in the writing in the dust. When we take that pause, we listen to God, and we take up the cross that Jesus offers us, the cross that is the way of love and not the way of violence. And it's in that we can change the world. I ask for in the next minute or two that you take time to pause and to listen to God, to be open to how God is moving in your life and what God is calling you, where God is calling you, and how God is calling you to take up his cross of love and to take that love into the world that his light might shine. I want to close this sermon with a prayer from Maya Angelou. Please join with me as we pray. Thank you for your presence during the hard and mean days. For then we have you to lean upon. Thank you for your presence during the hard and mean days. For then we have you to lean upon. Thank you for your presence during the bright and sunny days. Imagine for then we can share that which we have with those who have less. And thank you for your presence during holy days. For then we are able to celebrate you and our families and our friends. For those who have no voice, we ask you to speak. For those who feel unworthy, we ask you to pour your love out in waterfalls of tenderness. For those who live in pain, we ask you to bathe them in the river of your healing. For those who are lonely, we ask you to keep them company. For those who are depressed, we ask you to shower upon them the light of hope. Dear Creator, you, the borderless sea of substance, we ask you to give all the world that which we need most, peace. Amen.